Good morning. It is Tuesday, November 17th, and it is time now to move on from week 3 to week 4 in the course. We're reaching the halfway point, and I think there's been a lot to discuss, absorb, understand, comment on. A lot of work so far, and this week is, in a way, no different in substance, maybe in form a little bit, because you actually won't be writing per se. You're going to be developing a brief presentation, which is in itself not as easy as it may seem to most of us. To say, oh, just a quick PowerPoint, but when you look at putting together the components, it's something that requires a lot of thought. So I really want people to make sure you do that. But that being aside, that's the little technical point. Let's just talk about what the transition from last week to this week and what we saw. Now, as I have come to experience, week 3 gets a very lively discussion going. You notice we're up over 100 entries to the discussion board. And the whole idea of the IDEO model really gets people excited. And I think what was really interesting to me is how much people were willing to consider different points of view about it. That it is a very radical idea to many businesses, and many of you saw different applications for it in different situations. And to understand that this is maybe something that might work somewhere and not somewhere else. But the whole idea is that this was a culture. That was the point we were trying to develop, that this is a culture. It's not just a practical method. It really requires a culture in which it can thrive. And the question still may be out is, does the method they use create the culture, or does culture foster the method? It's a very interesting thing. And as I said in last week's video, I'm always very skeptical when a new leader comes into any organization of any size and says, I'm going to change the culture. Generally, I don't believe them, because I think they oversimplify the work and the depth of work and the depth of experience and the length of time that it really takes to effect a true cultural change. And it's manifested in so many different ways, from the words people use, to the actions they take, to how seriously they mean something, to the willingness to accept the old, not just enforce the new. It's really a process. It is not an event. I would never suggest that we could have a major event that forces a cultural change in any size organization. It really just doesn't happen. So that being said, we're going to move now to week 4, where we talk about technology in organizations. And what I really want to make sure we look at are two things. One is the definition that we use for technology. And I'm going to ask you just to keep your mind open about what you think technology is. Now, that's not to say, when I say keep an open mind about technology, is to acknowledge all the possibilities. Yeah, but not just looking forward, looking backward. Look back to the hunter-gatherer model. Did they use technology? Yes, they did. Okay. Look back throughout history. Did people ever use technology? Yes, they did. Right. The wheel is a technology. Right. The simple wedge is a technology. Right. Yet a smartphone is what we think of when we talk about technology today. We talk about the tech companies. We almost look at them as though they were the arbiters of everything that we do, and yet so much of what we do is technology. Fire is a technology. Okay? That's something I want you to do, is to keep a very expansive and open view of what technology is, what it means, and how it affects how organizations operate and how we design them. Technology right now is a major factor in organizational design, especially with our response to the coronavirus pandemic. So many of us are now working remotely, something we didn't know before, right? It hasn't been too long that we've been able to do this. 10 years ago, to work remotely on this scope wouldn't have been possible. 2 years ago it might have been, but we were still mired in the models of 10 years ago. So things have an impact, and again, it's really important that you keep, as I keep insisting here, keep an open mind and keep an expansive mind. Think about it in the big picture. The other thing that we'll touch on too in week 4 is this idea of core competency and competitive advantage, and how do organizations identify their core competencies and take them to a place where they develop competitive advantages in the marketplace. And the one thing I'm going to really just caution people right now, it's something I see over and over again. And it's to make sure that when you're looking at this issue, that you make the distinction between the concept of core competency and core values. They are highly related, but they're highly different. Okay? A core competency. What's a competency? A competency is something you do. It's something that you can perform. It is an act. It is a mechanism. It's all those things. The great example that I love to give people about core competency is if you look at the company Honda, and if you ask people what they think Honda makes, right away you'll get some very obvious answers. Oh, cars, motorcycles, lawnmowers, snowblowers, generators, power equipment. Well, what do they all have in common? What those all have in common is an internal combustion engine. And for years, we can say that that was Honda's core competency. That's what Honda did. Build products that revolved around the use of an internal combustion engine. Now, that core competency may actually be under a bit of assault, if you will, with the need and the recognition that there may be a need and a trend and an opportunity to move away from internal combustion, fossil fuel burning engines as a power source to alternative power sources. It's a possibility. Could happen. So that could change Honda's understanding of its core competencies. But up until this point, that's a competency. Now, a core value is something entirely different. That's really a philosophy. That's how you want to do business. That's how you want to live your life. That's how you want to do things. And you can see, you can have a core competency and not necessarily have core values. You can have a set of core values and not necessarily have core competencies. I really want people to make sure that you maintain that distinction, because it's very important as to how you'll approach some of the issues and the discussions that we present this week. Okay, as is evidenced by this video being on Tuesday morning, I am admittedly a little behind schedule. So I'm going to try to make sure that I'm going to really try to get all the discussions done tonight, so that, again, you have the advantage of any feedback that I might have for you before the first discussions are due tomorrow evening. The papers I should be able to get through also on Wednesday, but just like last week, a few may spill into Thursday morning. But generally, very happy with what I'm seeing. Last week's discussion, as I said, IDEO tends to get people kind of excited about what can be, what the possibilities can be, and the discussions are very interesting. So at that point, I'm going to give up my little speech for this morning. Thank you very much for listening, and I really am sincere about this. When I ask, what do you think, I mean it, and when I ask if you have questions and invite you to ask me, please do. Okay, thank you very much.